you ready?
Welcome into our Charter Road Hospitality Studios here at Town Place Suites, located at 105 Ed Perry Boulevard, across from the Oxford Conference Center. This is Hotty Toddy Hotline. I'm your host, Browning Stubbs, and we got a great show for you planned today as the Ole Miss baseball team. They've been struggling, but we'll have a lot of insight on that and maybe some ways that Ole Miss can fix their recent struggles. They fall to Arkansas as they only won 1 out of 3 in that series. Meanwhile, the Ole Miss women's basketball team, they just ended their season last week as they lost to Middle Tennessee State in the Sweet 16 of the women's NIT. We'll talk with their head coach, Matt Insell, who will give us insight on what's coming up in the future for Ole Miss women's basketball. He'll talk some recruiting and what's next for some of the seniors on that basketball team. We'll also talk with the host of the Louisiana State Roar show on the CRM Sports Family Network. That's Chad LaBorde. He'll give us insight on some of the new college basketball openings in the SEC. And he'll also kind of talk about the one remaining SEC team in college basketball, the Kentucky Wildcats. And much more coming up on Hotty Toddy Hotline. If you want to get in touch with the show, the toll-free number is 800-621-0042. Find us on Twitter at Hotty Toddy Hotline and on Facebook at Hotty Toddy Hotline. It's a good show right by the pool today, so hope you guys listen to it. Very good. All right, we'll be back with more about Ole Miss baseball. Stay with us on Hotty Toddy Hotline. And welcome back into Hotty Toddy Hotline. I'm your host, Browning Stubbs, and let's talk about the Ole Miss baseball team. The Ole Miss baseball team traveled over the weekend to Fayetteville to take on the Arkansas Razorbacks, and unfortunately, things did not go as planned for Coach Mike Bianco and the Rebels. I said it last week. I said Ole Miss, throughout their struggles, they needed to have the mindset of getting a sweep against Arkansas. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, as not only did Ole Miss not win the series, but they lost the series, as they only won one game, which was in Game 2. But on top of what happened last week, Ole Miss also lost a doubleheader last Tuesday to the UAB Blazers. In those two games, Ole Miss only combined for 2 combined runs in the 2 games, so that wasn't good. But let's focus on the Arkansas series. Ole Miss came into the series better than Arkansas, and Game 1, you had Christian Trent was on the mound. And usually Christian Trent has been the go-to guy for Ole Miss. I mean, he's only lost now 2 games in his whole career, and it was really unfortunate that the Rebels weren't able to pick up the first victory, as Ole Miss went in on Thursday night and lost 10-3 in that baseball game. And it wasn't a pretty sight for Ole Miss as they gave up 10 runs in that one to an Arkansas team who eliminated them last year in the SEC tournament, but Ole Miss currently is having a better season than they are. But Earl Robinson did record his second multi-hit game in the past 3 games, which was his 5th of the season. He went 2 for 4 with 1 RBI for the Rebs, and wasn't the best day for Christian Trent. He allowed 5 runs on 11 hits, and usually you think Christian Trent is going to give you the victory. He consistently has over the last 2 years, but it is a long baseball season, and you're going to lose a couple games. It happens. Can't really blame Christian Trent for that one, but in Game 2, Ole Miss did respond, however, as the Rebels opened up the scoring top half of the second inning with a 2-out rally that plated 3 runs. So a lot of action happened in the Rebels for the second game of the series, and sophomore right-hander Brady Bramlett pitched a very good game as he allowed 2 runs on 7 hits and 5.1 innings of work as he earned his 4th victory of the season. And also, Ole Miss got some help from their batters. So Brady Bramlett got some run support in that one as Cameron Dishon, he had a solo home run in the 4th inning, and Colby Bortles hit a solo home run in the 5th inning. So Ole Miss, the run support, really came to work and played very good baseball. However, Game 3, we've said the storyline all season long has been who's going to be that third starter for Ole Miss. And Ole Miss, they sent out Will Stokes again. Stokes lost the Game 3 against Florida last week, but Stokes he came in relief, he started the game, but he didn't really do anything as he allowed 3 runs in the baseball game. And Scott Weathersby was the one who came in to relief, but he allowed a couple runs as well that gave Arkansas the lead for good. And it was really disappointing weekend for Ole Miss, because going in they were a better team than Arkansas. So Ole Miss falls to 14-4 on the season and 4-5 in conference play. Ole Miss will take on the University of Memphis on Tuesday at AutoZone Park. First pitch is set for 6:30 p.m. in AutoZone Park. That's a AAA stadium where the St. Louis Cardinals affiliate, the Memphis Redbirds, play baseball in. So it's actually one of the nicest minor league parks. So if you're an Ole Miss fan, I would recommend making the hour journey up to Memphis to see the Rebels play, because it's a nice stadium that they're playing in. But Ole Miss, they need to fix some issues. They keep losing these midweek games to non-conference teams. We've seen it with UAB. We've seen it with Stetson. We've seen it with Arkansas Pine Bluff. But now they're going to take on a pretty good Memphis Tiger team who they need to get a win against. That game, like I said, is on Tuesday. And then Ole Miss returns home for a weekend series against the Tennessee Volunteers. First pitch is set for 6:30 p.m. on Friday, and Saturdays afternoon games at 4 p.m. and Sundays is that's actually Easter Sunday, so that's a really good way for the family to spend Easter. That one is at 1:30 p.m. Ole Miss has got to get back on track, needless to say. So Ole Miss really needs to get that third starter set. If it was my opinion, I'm not a coach or anything, but Sam Smith in the past has been a pretty solid bread and butter pitcher. However, he's just having an off year, but I think you got to stick with him. You pitch guys like Will Stokes who really aren't contributing to the level that you like them to. I mean, Stokes, he is a freshman, given, but I think Sam Smith, you got to go back to him. I mean, give him a couple more starts to maybe get his mojo back, because in the locker room, I mean, I still think, though he's lost 3 or 4 games already this year, I think you got to stick with the veteran pitcher in Sam Smith. So hopefully Mike Bianco and company will make the right decision and go back to Sam Smith. It wasn't a good weekend for Sykes Orvis, as he actually in the game on Sunday had 3 strikeouts. So he almost finished the game with 4 strikeouts, which would have been terrible. But Sykes Orvis now, I mean, his batting average is sitting .242 and 6 home runs on the season, which is down from where he was just a season ago. So hopefully Sykes Orvis and company can get back on track, as Ole Miss, that they've had a couple surprise players with Cameron Dishin and Kyle Watson have been good hitters at the plate this season, and Earl Robinson also stepping up as well. So hopefully Ole Miss can get some more runs for it and find that third starter. All right, well, that wraps up our Ole Miss baseball discussion. Stick with us here on Hotty Toddy Hotline. And welcome back into Hotty Toddy Hotline. We got a great atmosphere going on at Town Place Suites by the Oxford Conference Center. There's a swimming pool behind us, a jacuzzi behind us, and it's springtime. It's fun. I kind of wish I was in my floaty in the pool doing this right now, but I'm not. But I don't want to get our equipment wet, because that would be really bad, and our producer John Rowe will not be very happy about that. But we're back on Hotty Toddy Hotline, and we got to talk about spring football, because that's the number one sport that a lot of people like to hear about in Oxford, and they're in preparation for the Regions Bank Road Bowl on April 11th at 12 noon Central Time at Vaught Hemingway Stadium. But Ole Miss, there's a lot of position battles and injuries that are going on right now that we need to discuss, as the quarterback position is one that will not be decided until the fall, according to head coach Hugh Freeze. And head coach Hugh Freeze and offensive coordinator Dan Werner are apparently both generally pleased with the quarterback play that they received from junior college transfer Chad Kelly and sophomores Ryan Buchanan and Devontae Kincaid, and they expect the competition to continue in the middle of fall camp. So we may not have a starter until, a month, well, maybe not even a month, but a couple weeks before the season starts. And it's going to be a really interesting battle because Chad Kelly, I think he's got the best arm out of everyone, and obviously he's got a lot of hype as well. And sophomore Ryan Buchanan, he's more of a pocket passer guy, knows the system very well, and Devontae Kincaid is a guy who can run the ball, throw it as well. He's got quick feet. So you really can't go wrong with either guy. I think each quarterback will have a good chance to win the starting position, and Hugh Freeze, I think he hopefully can find the right guy, because with the number one recruit in Shea Patterson coming in next season, it would be nice if Patterson could be redshirted while Ole Miss could play one of these next quarterbacks for the next 2 years. So we'll see how that progresses as well. But there's also a lot of injuries with the offensive line. Laramie Tunsil, Aaron Morris, Robert Conyers, all of them have not been participating over the last week because they've had injuries. Of course, we all know what happened to Laramie Tunsil, hurt his leg in the Peach Bowl game, and Tunsil had some other injuries during the season, especially in the loss to LSU as well. But overall, according to some of the reports, they say that the defense, this is OleMissSports.com, the defense by all indications has been the star through the first 3 weeks spring practice. Free said this year's group that returned 7 starters from the nation's top-scoring defense has the potential to be maybe more physical than any defense that he has ever had. Right now, some of the drills that the spring football team is doing, they're doing 7-on-7s, and they're doing some 11-on-11 live action as well. So a lot of drills that they're doing as well. And one other player that's been really well as the junior college transfer, Tony Bridges. Bridges is from Hattiesburg, so we probably have some listeners that are very familiar with him. He's going to be a defensive back that played community college at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College, so he's probably going to be a guy that's going to take the place of the likes of Senquez Golson and Cody Pruitt, because Ole Miss is going to need another guy like that in the secondary. Also, the Morier Stringfellow has been impressive as well. He's the receiver. He did get arrested, but he's back on the football field and seems to be doing pretty well. Laquan Treadwell, obviously the star player on the Ole Miss football team, is recovering from his injuries from last year, and he's been seen running on a treadmill, and he's still sometimes walking on a scooter, but hopefully Treadwell will rest up really well and be able to come back and be ready for fall camp as well. And there's also some more defensive players that Dave Womack has been impressed with Breland Sparks. He's the redshirt freshman defensive lineman, so hopefully he'll be able to join Robert Condici, Marquise Haynes for this season. Also, guys like Kendarius Webster, who's a DB as well, along with Kylo Moore. There's a lot of hype about Kylo Moore, who's a junior, played pretty good football last year for the Ole Miss Rebels. And also DJ Jones, who might be the most hyped newcomer this year, is the JUCO college transfer. And he's going to be a defensive tackle that should come right in right away and contribute good football to the Ole Miss Rebels. Just a reminder, April 11th is the Regions Bank Grove Bowl, and Ole Miss, they're getting in preparation for that as the season kicks off on September 5th at, the time has not yet been announced, but it is against the Tennessee Martin Skyhawks. That's the first game at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. All right, well, we'll take a break, but coming up, we're going to talk Ole Miss women's basketball. The season has now ended, and we're going to talk with their head coach, Matt Insell, who will reflect on the season as the Lady Rebs were just eliminated from the Sweet 16 of the NIT to the MTSU Blue Raiders. So keep it here on Hotty Toddy Hotline. We'll be right back. And welcome back into Hotty Toddy Hotline, and we have a fan of the show joining us now, and one very popular man on the Ole Miss campus is doing great things with the Ole Miss women's basketball team. And that's Matt Insell. Matt, how's it going, Coach?
Hey, glad you guys are having me on, and things are going well. It's been a great year for us.
It has, Matt, and your team, they had the most successful season in several years. I believe it's been the best record since the 06-07 season as the team earned a 19-4 record. And Coach, it came to an end against your dad's team in the Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders last week. But overall, you made it to the Sweet 16 in the NIT. I mean, just kind of talk about your postseason run. You know, beating Tennessee Martin and beating Georgia Tech, and kind of how your players took this experience.
Yeah, we started against UT Martin, and obviously they're in the Ohio Valley Conference. It's a weaker league, but they're a team that's went out and they play a lot of tough competition. And they went undefeated in their league, had one of the best players in the low Division I level, in their post player. And, that was a tough matchup to start there. So we knew we had to come out ready to go from the start playing them. We got a big win there. It really dominated them. They kind of cut back in it towards the end, but it really never was in doubt majority of that game. And then you bounce back and play a Georgia Tech team, which again had beat Duke 2 weeks before we played them. And last week of the season, they beat Duke. Duke went on to the Sweet 16. You got a Georgia Tech team that's very talented. They can do a lot of different things. They're one of the most explosive players in the country, and that Caleb Davis team. Again, we just came out to start and just, it was an ugly game early, but just never really was in doubt that we were going to win the game. We had control of that game the majority of the way, and just really seized control of it the second half and played really good basketball. And then we went down to Middle Tennessee and didn't have one of our better nights. We struggled early on in the first half, had 13 turnovers in the first half, ended up with 16 for the game, played better, played half. If you dig a hole on the road against a good basketball team, you usually lose. And we just did not play well that night as a group. It was just one of those games where we didn't have it. But at the end of the day, as I told them after the game, that our basketball team really changed the national views of Ole Miss women's basketball from a national media standpoint, national, team standpoint, other teams looking at us. Just an incredible year. The postseason was great for our young players to be able to get more practice time, more experience. Just look at what happened in the postseason. Kelsey Briggs played her best basketball of the year in the NIT. Kiera Golden played her best basketball of the year in the NIT. Cedrica Bessa played her best game of the year against the Tennessee State. Queen Hayes is continuing to get better. Erica Fisk. Just right now, Greta Hart played one of her best basketball games of the year. 8 points, 6 boards against the middle. Fouled out. And that's another thing. But she played really, really hard. And it's a lot of momentum going into the postseason here, into the spring, into the summer. A lot of things we can build on. A lot of excitement around our program right now, and I'm really excited for us.
And Coach, that was actually the last game for a few of your seniors, and Danielle McCray, Amber Singletary, and Tia Fowler. What did you tell those three girls? When they took their jersey off for the final time.
Yeah, it was. It was a tough pill to swallow this game because those kids worked so hard to bring our program back. They went through a lot of things over their 4 years here. And to be able to finish the way they finished in their last year, going to the postseason, having people nationally talk about them, seeing their name as a bubble team, just all of that kind of stuff. Obviously it was tough on us because we wanted to make the NCAA tournament, and that was tough when that didn't happen. But they really changed the landscape back and the culture back in a positive direction for our program. And I always been indebted to them. They'll always have a place in my heart. It was real tough. Looking at Amber Singletary, Danielle McCray, and Tia Fowler the last time on the board, and the things they've accomplished here and the things they did over the last 2 years, it's the foundation for something great in the future.
And Coach, let's talk about Tia for a second. Have you spoken to her about what's next for her and if she's trying to pursue a professional career in basketball?
Yeah, Tia and I spoke. She's time with her agent over the weekend, from what I understand, and she was excited about that as she moves into professional ranks, getting that out of the way. One of the top sports agents in the world in women's athletics. Somebody that was hot on pursuit of Tia, and she made a decision on Sunday to sign with him, from what I understand, and that was exciting for her. And, she'll be drafted somewhere in the WNBA draft. Where that is first round or second round, I don't know. But she'll be drafted. She'll go to training camp in May. She'll have an opportunity to make a team. And then no matter what happens in the WNBA, where the money is made, and women's basketball is overseas. And Tia's got a big market overseas. A lot of people are excited about her over there because of her athletic ability, her ability to play in the paint, change the game offensively and defensively. She's got a lot of great things going for her. And she's excited about that, taking the next step. I've been on the road recruiting, so we've been kicked to the phone. I'll be back tomorrow for a couple hours. Her and I are going to spend a little time together. Danielle McCrae is another one that I just got to follow her. She's really excited. She got invited for Tia, kind of set up a little bit with her future already. Danielle McCrae wants to go to the WNBA Combine. She wants to prove herself in different areas. She was invited to that, and that was something that was exciting for her, but I didn't know she would get that invite. That was something we've been working hard, hoping that she would get an invite to the Combine, and she got one. So she'll be flying to Tampa this weekend to basically work out in front of a lot of WNBA teams and coaches and things like that, and also agents. So she'll be deciding who she's going to sign with here in the future when it comes to an agent. But another player that's going to play overseas, maybe not the WNBA career that Tia has the possibility of having. Danielle's got a great career overseas, and she's somebody I can see being a veteran, 9-10-year veteran overseas, making good money to start her life. She loves the game that much, so I'm going to help her any way I can to do that. Amber Singletary, still deciding on what she's going to do when it comes to her life. Obviously she wants to get into sports broadcasting and do some things like that, and not as much about playing pro. So she's trying to get into, I think she's trying to work hard to get into grad school, would like to stay at Ole Miss if it's possible to stay in grad school there. Hopefully we'll do some internships with ESPN, SEC Network, and different things like that. She'd like to get into broadcasting and has a great future in that. She's a great personality, somebody that could do really, really well in that field.
Well, that's great news for all of the seniors, Coach. And let's kind of look ahead towards next year. You're going to lose Tia Fowler, who was primarily the person who the offense ran through. So, is it going to be a committee that replaces her production, or is there someone on your roster, kind of like a Kelsey Briggs, who really played well down the stretch, that is going to be your new go-to scorer in the post?
We lost Valencia Barlow last year, and everybody's wondering who's going to replace her. I was wondering who was going to replace her. I didn't know. I felt like we had two good options, where one of them emerged into being an unbelievable option in Queen Hayes and having one of the best freshman years of any kid in recent history of our program. And, just really, really praise her for that. Now, as you move on and you're trying to replace Tia Fowler, we've got some players that have been playing behind her that have really stepped up over the last month. I look at a Kelsey Briggs, I look at a Bretta Hart or Shaquilla Joseph. We got a precious person sitting out that's another really versatile forward. John L. Williams coming in the recruiting class, trying to add another one. But if we don't, I feel real good about the 4 or 5 options that we have, 5 options we have right now. 2 of them will emerge. Now, who those 2 will be, I don't know yet. They'll all have great chances to do that. Shaquilla Joseph started every game as a freshman, did not start last year. It wasn't because she got beat out. It's just, Danielle McCrae and Tia kind of clicked better together, but Shaquilla Joseph had as good a year as Danielle did at the 4. And Kelsey Briggs, as of late, was one of the more productive over the last 3 to 4 games than Tia and Danielle was. And so, that's exciting. Bretta Hart, I think, has more talent athletically than Tia has. Now, will she get it physically the way Tia got it? I don't know. That'll be something I'm going to challenge her about. And I feel like that she cares a lot about doing it. And I think if she continues that same care and wants to, she'll have a chance to do something real special. But it's going to be more time by committee. I could see us playing some 4 guards at times. I can see that. Kind of speed it up even more. There's a lot of different things I can see happening with our roster next year that I'm excited about it. I think we're on the right track. I feel like we're going to have a very talented roster. We will, again, be very young. You're talking about 90% of your roster being freshmen and sophomores. We'll have the same team basically back for 2 years. And so there's a lot of great things happening. Recruiting is going unbelievably well right now. 2016, which is to be high school seniors next year. And I'm really excited about that, the possibility of the players that we bring in there. So it's an exciting time to be an Ole Miss Rebel right now in the women's basketball side.
And speaking of some of your recruiting that you're up to, what are some areas that you're going to be traveling here in the next couple months?
I've been in Florida the last 2 days. I'm actually, in Florida now as I talk to you. And, Florida's an area where we hit pretty hard. And so I've been down here, been players. I was out in California. We're kind of a national brand. And, we first started, we start within a 2 or 3 hour radius. If there's the option of those type players that can help us win an SEC in those areas. And then if we don't find it in those areas, then we've got to branch out and compete. Because, look, we're trying to win an SEC championship. There's only a certain amount of players that can help us win that league. It's win the league. There's only a certain amount of players that can play in our system. And so we've got to go out and find those players no matter where they're at. We've got to find them, and we've got to commit to the Ole Miss Rebels. And we've got a great staff. Alex Simmons and Brittany Hudson are two of the brightest stars in our game when it comes to recruiting. Todd Schaefer does an unbelievable job for us when it comes to X's and O's and scouting and things like that and individual workouts. I mean, we've got a real well-rounded staff. And so getting the players and locating them is not the issue. It's convincing them to come to Ole Miss instead of going to Baylor, instead of going to Notre Dame or Kentucky, wherever it is they're looking at. That's what we're out here doing right now. And when you're recruiting against the top teams in the country, that means you're recruiting the right kid. And we're in on those kids. We're in on the top players of the nation. And we just got to continue to stay in there, keep banging on those doors until one of them walks through those doors.
And, Coach, your brand is obviously getting a lot bigger on campus, as well as Tia Fowler, who took home the Women's Most Valuable Rebel Award at the Rebels Choice Awards, and Gracie Frizzell won a Fan Favorite Award. So, I mean, overall, what does that mean to you as a coach?
It says a lot about where we're at. I remember 2 years ago when I first got here, one of the first functions I went to was the Rebel Choice Award. And I sat with our team that night. I was basically 2 days on the job. And I sat with our team, and we weren't nominated for one award at all. There was no award we were nominated. I don't even think we were on the highlight video for the Rebel Choice Awards. And that was something that I talked to our team about that night. I was like, we've got to make a change here. We've got to change this. And they agreed. And, one thing that we have done is we have made that change. And we're up for some awards. We was on highlight. We was up for Game of the Year. There was a lot of awards we were up for. I thought maybe we had a good chance of winning it. We ended up not winning, but it's great just being up for it. And, it says a lot about where we're going, our program. But we got to continue to grow it. Our attendance went up as the season went. We had great crowds. I remember 2 years ago, our first game, when we tipped, there was about 20 people there. We're starting to get over, right around 2,000 a game now. We got to grow that up to 3,000 or 4,000. That to continue to grow. And that's all exciting right now. That's something we're just really excited about.
All right, Coach. Well, from all of us at Hotty Toddy Hotline, we want to wish you luck on your recruiting trips, and hopefully you can go get some new Rebels.
Hey, we're going to convince some more people to come be Rebels, and the thing that where I want to be playing is I want to be playing on Sunday and Monday in the future of the women's tournament. If you're playing on Sunday and Monday, it means you're in the Elite Eight. And as I watched those games last night, I sent a text out to our players and staff that this is what we're about. This is where we're going. You need to all know that. So that's something that we're looking forward to. That's something we're going to keep striving for each and every day.
All right, Coach, I want to thank you for joining me on the show, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you, Browning.
Follow Matt Insell on Twitter at @MInsell. It's a great follow, I promise you. All right, well, coming up, we're going to wrap up the show on Hotty Toddy Hotline. Stick with us. Hey, welcome back into Hotty Toddy Hotline. I'm your host, Browning Stubbs, and now we're joined by a very special guest, Chad LaBorde, who is the host of the Louisiana State Roar radio show on the CRM Sports Network. And Chad, how's it going, man?
Well, it's going well. What a weekend of basketball. I tell you, we saw some climatic games.
That we did, Chad. And speaking of one of those teams that played over the weekend was the Kentucky Wildcats. As you know very well, as an LSU media member, LSU took them to the wire. Ole Miss also took Kentucky to the wire. But let's talk about this Kentucky team, just for a second. I mean, it kind of seemed like it was going to happen, that they were going to lose. But ultimately, despite all the shots that Notre Dame made, Kentucky, they flexed their muscle and they showed why they're one of the best teams in the country. I mean, I guess my question for you is this Kentucky team one of the most special teams that you've ever seen, or are they just a team that's maybe not as talented as all the teams that Calipari has had, but just a group that's really smart and has a good mix of veterans that's really just making the right plays down the stretch and executing?
Everyone wanted to question in the media nationally their mental toughness and their physical strength mixed with that along the way, because after all, the Southeastern Conference, as you mentioned, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, LSU gave them some good ball games along the way in the regular season, but they haven't really met a challenge maybe quite similar to theirs in conference play, other than a Georgia, like we mentioned, Ole Miss, A&M, LSU. So the question was whether or not mentally, if it gets down to crunch time and they're in a situation like they were in against Notre Dame, could they overcome that challenge? And they answered the question without a doubt. Having a player like Karl Anthony Towns on that club, as young as he is, and as tall as he is, amongst all the other big guys on that club, the guards and everything, it's just amazing. It's amazing to see. I would have to rate this Kentucky team if they were to not falter and defeat Wisconsin and go on and win the national title game a week from tonight. You would have to rate them as probably, if not the one of the best at the very least of all time. I certainly think the best in the SEC out of all the other great Kentucky teams and other great teams in the Southeastern Conference.
All right, Chad, and speaking of the Southeastern Conference, let's talk about one of the jobs that recently opened up this weekend with the Tennessee Volunteers. They let go of head coach Donnie Tyndall, who led the Vols to a 500 record this season, and it seemed like Donnie was doing some good things there. But my question is, do you think that Tennessee knew that this was going to be coming, that Tyndall was probably going to be punished for his alleged recruiting violations at Southern Mississippi?
I don't think they could have known it, because if they did, they wouldn't have hired him. Believe me, Tennessee basketball doesn't want to go through what Tennessee football has gone through. Like 3 coaches in 4 years kind of thing. They don't want to go through that many coaches in a 4 or 5 year stretch like they're going through right now. And for them to have to fire him and let him go, they didn't know anything going into this other than it was an investigation that was happening down there, and they knew that there could be some ramifications. I don't think they really thought that the ramifications would be having to let him go. And I think they did it because obviously look what happened with Bruce Pearl. They have to protect themselves. So letting Donnie Tyndall go was something they didn't want to do. And it's obvious because I don't think they wanted to be in this situation in all likelihood at this time at the end of the season. Again.
And Chad, there's a petition online for Bruce Pearl to return to Tennessee. I think it's got over 1,000 people that have signed up. So what's the percentage of that actually happening? And also, who are some other names that you think Tennessee could pursue? And is Andy Kennedy possibly an option you think Tennessee might go after?
To me, it's hard. They have to throw a lot of money at him, and they can. They're capable of doing it, but it would be a lateral move in certain cases within the conference. I mean, when you talk about basketball in the SEC, that's one thing that the SEC has not found its strength in is men's basketball. We all know that, other than Kentucky, of course, and Florida most years. Everyone else seems to be about the same. Whether you talk about Tennessee, LSU, Ole Miss, State, they all seem to be running in the same circles, maybe a little different angle, but the same circles at the end of the day. So Tennessee certainly can pay to get a guy like Andy Kennedy. What about Coach Marshall over at Wichita State? I mean, there was interest from Alabama and Tennessee last I heard about him. So I think myself, they need a big marquee guy. Donnie Tyndall really wasn't a big name compared to Bruce Pearl. And you're not going to get Bruce Pearl to go to Tennessee from Auburn. That's a lateral move for him to go back there. I just don't see it. Certainly would create a rivalry there, not that there is already, but it would be a lot of friction. And Auburn's going to pay him. They're going to want to keep him. They've had worse times in basketball than Tennessee has in recent history. And Auburn is not known for being a basketball school. The only way a Coach Pearl would leave would be for, if Coach Krzyzewski would retire and the Duke job would be available. It would have to be a school that would really be a huge basketball school, because we know Auburn isn't. But to go back to Tennessee, I don't see that happening. They're going to get a coach, if it's Coach Marshall over at Wichita State, I think would be a great gift for Tennessee. I think Tennessee's a better basketball school than Alabama, and that's a no-brainer there. So I do think they need to get a bigger name since they have that opportunity now than Donnie Tyndall. I don't think Donnie Tyndall, he was more of an up-and-comer, I think, and not really something that Tennessee needed to do, really, in going in that direction. So I would have to think that if they could get a marquee name out of this, that would be the best thing for them up there in Knoxville.
And Chad, speaking of Greg Marshall, he's apparently meeting with Alabama this week about the possible head coaching job. How likely is it that you think he'll take that job? I mean, personally, I think there's better jobs, such as Texas and Arizona State. But, if Alabama throws the bank at Marshall, it might be hard for him to decline.
I think when you go into Alabama, everything is going to be dictated, and I know this from his time at LSU and in football, and certainly at Alabama. Nick Saban is going to be the kingpin there, and it's understandable. Football is important. I don't fault Alabama at all for that. I think that if you're a coach in a situation as Greg Marshall's in, trying to establish continuity in what he had at Wichita State on the next level, which is certainly at an SEC school, they could use his services because, as I said, the conference right now there's not a lot of Billy Donovans, there's not a lot of John Calipari's or Bruce Pearl for that matter. So for Alabama to get him would be a good find. But if I'm Coach Marshall right now and I want to look at my career and what I can build on, more so than having a distraction like Alabama has more in football, would be to go to a Tennessee and perhaps a Texas, which I know has its issues, but like Florida can be capable of being a dual threat in not only football but basketball as well. So I think Tennessee or Texas would be better options than Alabama, no question.
All right, Chad, I want to thank you for joining me on the show today, and I can't wait to see how the SEC coaching fold, how it turns out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's starting to get like football. It gets interesting when you approach the off season like this, whether or not Coach A is going to be with this team or that team, or Coach B is going to be over here. It's certainly going to be fun to watch.
All right, that's Chad LaBorde of the Louisiana State Roar Show on the CRM Sports Network. We're going to take a break, but after the break, we're going to wrap up the show on Hotty Toddy Hotline this week, so stay with us. We'll be right back. And welcome back into Hotty Toddy Hotline. I'm your host, Browning Stubbs, and behind me is the luxury new swimming pool at Town Place Suites that you guys don't want to miss out, located at 103 Ed Perry Boulevard, right across from the Oxford Conference Center. I wish I could go take a dive in the pool right now. I'm kind of sweaty doing the show right now, but if you're in town for a baseball series, it's a great place to come stay. It's the newest property across Charter Road Hospitality, and there's also some new places such as the Hampton Inn just right across the block at 105 Ed Perry Boulevard, and the Hampton Inn also on Jackson Avenue at 110 Heritage Drive. Their number is 662-232-2442, and also around Jackson Avenue is the Holiday Inn Express located at 112 Heritage Drive. You can reach them at 662-236-2500. And if you guys want to get more in touch with Hotty Toddy Hotline, make sure you find us on Facebook at Hotty Toddy Hotline and on Twitter at Hotty Toddy Hotline. All right, let's go over some things that you guys need to know. As the Ole Miss softball team, they swept the Arkansas Razorbacks over the weekend. As Mike Smith got his first series win as an Ole Miss Rebel, they sweep the Razorbacks in that one. And some other big events coming up this week. Softball takes on Tennessee Martin at home on Tuesday. Baseball travels at Memphis on Tuesday. The men's tennis team is home on Thursday against Tennessee. And the women's tennis team, they're on the road Friday at Georgia. Meanwhile, softball will go on the road Friday at LSU. And then, of course, the big Ole Miss sporting event over the weekend is the baseball team, as the Ole Miss baseball team takes on the Tennessee Volunteers starting on Friday at 6:30 p.m. And speaking of softball, third baseman Allison Brown has been named the Southeastern Conference Player of the Week after leading the Rebels to a 3-game sweep on the road against Arkansas. So a lot of good things going on with some Ole Miss sports, and it's great to be a part of it. All right, well, make sure you follow us for some Ole Miss baseball updates on Twitter. But for our executive producer, John Rawl, I'm Browning Stubbs, and you've been listening to Hotty Toddy Hotline, a production of CRM Sports on the Colonel Rep Radio Network.